There we go. So like I was saying, I'm a master's student at Arizona State University. I'm studying user experience. I'm also an AI analyst student worker for learning innovations. We probably have many people here who work for ASU. And this event is not officially sponsored by ASU, but the information that I'm going to talk about here that we're going to engage in is going to be information I learned through my research that I've conducted. So in this last semester, I decided to took it upon myself to do a thesis project, and I studied people's communication behavior, communication patterns. So I didn't particularly study AI necessarily, but I studied how people communicate, how people ask questions, how people provide instructions through the context, through the lens of artificial intelligence, and how people specifically do that when communicating to artificial intelligence. And so I've been studying that for the last several months. And this is sort of if we do get engagement, this is sort of like a workshop slash focus group slash potentially just a presentation if no one feels comfortable sharing. So I'm going to be kind of just talking about whatever sort of comes to my head. I have slides here. I have some fundamental information about artificial intelligence and large language models that I'll be discussing. I'll be discussing some of my research, whatever direction all of you want to head, I'm willing to go that direction. If you share a question or share a concern or share a story, then we can go in a different direction and kind of cover that and what that looks like. But otherwise, I'll cover the foundational aspects, and I'll do my best to kind of make it as broad to serve those who are experienced in this field of prompting and those who may see themselves as casual prompters or may have never prompted in their life or with AI. So first and foremost, you notice that I haven't really ever stated prompt engineering. So the most common, the highest trend, if you look at Google Trends and you search prompt engineering, you'll see a skyrocket of prompt engineering terms rising in 2022, roughly around then. And so prompt engineering is kind of the official term currently for what I'm discussing, the field of prompting, AI human communication. But the reason why I haven't utilized that term at all is because my personal bias towards the term is that it's not inclusive or diverse enough. I feel like the role of AI, the role of this role of interacting with AI, this role of AI human communication needs more individuals from different disciplines, creative individuals, it needs linguistics, right? It needs psychology, it needs all these individuals. And I feel like prompt engineering is a turnoff to those in a creative field in many cases, or can be. So first and foremost, I want to clarify there's a difference between the foundational models of an AI like ChatGPT, Gemini, Pi, we have Llama, right? Those are foundational models. They're the base model of interaction. And there's a difference between interacting directly with the model, directly with Gemini, directly with Llama, and there's a difference between that and interacting with third-party tools. So oftentimes, your frustration with an AI product might come because you're not actually interacting with the full model, or you're interacting with a subpar model, right? And there's a lot of hype out there. And a lot of this hype is causing a lot of misinformation and a lot of frustration and a lot of bias or misunderstanding around how these models work and how to get the strengths out of them, right? There's a lot of hype and a lot of commercial industry marketing hype around it that people are like, okay, we have to get an AI into our system. We have to get AI chatbots into our X, Y, and Z. We have to do this. We have to do that with AI because it's a rising trend. You can see on Google the trend of artificial intelligence is skyrocketing. It has a lot of potential there. But I don't let this false hype create an illusion over the actual practical practical amazingness of this technology. And it's a lot of that amazingness isn't necessarily where it's at now, but where its potential to be is. And this idea that where it's at now is the worst it will ever be. And where it will be tomorrow and where it will be the next day will be double or quadruple as good as it is today. And we can already see that occur in the last year, in the last 3 years. We can see it quadruple. We can see years of advancements happen in a month. So that's what I call to action. I think I call to action is that this industry is so important to get familiar with, because around the corner it might be as useful as knowing how to use your email account, knowing how to use Microsoft Word, knowing how to use these various tools. So with that said, that's kind of some foundational information, some caveats. Is there any questions thus far? Is there any concerns? Am I talking too fast? Are people hearing me? I want to check my email too to see if perfect. Thumbs up. Okay, let me know if I speak too fast. I tend to do that. I tend to speak really quickly. And I think we're 10 minutes in. And so okay. Thought I heard something. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and kind of dive into some actionable information. So so far what I've said, hopefully it's been actionable to you guys, but we really want to make sure we get out of this time together some actionable stuff that you guys can take, and techniques, etc., that you guys can take and utilize in your prompting and in your interactions. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I saw some messages in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I have a short little slideshow here, nothing big. And I didn't prepare a big slideshow because I didn't want to just be the only one talking, right? But it may end up being the case, which is fine. And I have more information I can present if need be. Give me 1 second. And okay. So you should see my screen right now. And as I'm doing this slideshow, I'm gonna launch a poll. And so I launched a poll. It's a 3-question poll on prompting. This poll asks you what your experience level with prompting is, what your daily interaction level with prompting is, and it also asks you what type of prompter you are. And you can hold off on answering that last question if you don't know, and I'll go over these types of prompters very briefly. And this will help me kind of construct my information as well to cater to everyone. And so we'll put that to the side here. So the biggest issue of why AI, artificial intelligence, these models like ChatGPT, and this information here is assuming you're talking to the best of the models, right? The top of the line models, the state of the art, which is, in case ChatGPT 4, right? That's a top of the line model. It's been a benchmark that many AIs couldn't beat for a long time. It's set measurements and benchmarks that many other models, like primary models, couldn't outdo, couldn't beat. And then you have more recently, Claude's been around for a while, but you have Claude, and Claude has a new version called Claude 3 Opus. Now, Claude 3 Opus has claimed, and many people love it more than ChatGPT 4, and has claimed that it outperforms ChatGPT 4 on many tasks. So Claude 3 Opus is a top-of-the-line model that you can interact with. It's like $20 a month to interact with these models typically, and then you can oftentimes get free trials sometimes with some of them. There's various degrees of why you'd want to interact with one over the other, which if we have time, I can get into. And then there's Gemini. Gemini is Google's model, and Gemini has countless numbers of different variations of Gemini. You can access their lower end variations for free, and then you can, which was previously called Bard, but now it's called Gemini. And then you can access their higher end models by paying $20 a month. You can also get a free 2-month free trial and that gives you like Google Premium. Like you have 2 terabytes of Google Drive, all those other extra features with it that come with it. Then you have other primary models, but those are the top 3 that are very popular. You have in addition to that, you have Llama. Another one I really like is Pi. Pi, Pi
Hey,
is yes.
Kyle,
Hmm?
it's Donna.
Hi,
The
Donna.
Zoom link that you sent to me and Caesar doesn't work. It keeps us in an endless loop.
Huh? That's odd.
Can you shoot me a proper Zoom link?
Yes, I can try to. Let me do that. Let's
Sorry,
see.
everybody.
There's also a Zoom link in the I wonder if that's because this is ASU only, a Zoom account. Yeah, I mean, that might be why. So you don't, if you don't have an ASU, it might be I had to approve
Yeah, it
you in a
would.
waiting room. I know that when you popped up.
Right, but it takes me in an endless loop when I go to the ASU Zoom link,
mhm.
and it's like authorized users only, and then sign in, and then you try to sign in and you can't sign in.
Yeah, I'm sending you the full invite, Zoom invite, and you can try that. Um,
Did you
Otherwise,
let
that's the
me?
only link I have. So I don't know what's happening. If that link doesn't work, I'm not really sure what could be going on with it. You can
Nope,
try to
it takes
call in
me
like you are
to.
now.
Yeah, but that's not going to help me because I can't see the screen.
Yeah. Um, yeah, see if that works. And I'm recording
No,
as
it does.
well.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why that would be. There, keep in mind there's an international version of the link, and then there's a regular version of the link. Make sure you're using that first one. Um,
Yeah, I did.
yeah, I don't know. I wonder if that's a lot of people are having that issue too. Yeah, I don't know why that would be.
Jonathan, unless you're able to dual factor, you can't get in. It's an ASU only space right now, the way you've got it set up.
I see.
Great.
Um,
Well, I have a colleague at my company trying to join also.
I'm glad you're recording so you can share the recording later. That's been a wonderful resource for me when I need to leave meetings early or can't get in. So thank you so much for recording.
yeah, I'll record it, and then you can also my screen sharing. I'm not sharing much on my screen; it's just bullet points. So you mostly just listening to me. So you can just call in and have them call in if that's working. I guess that's the only solution. I didn't know I made it up as a ASU only space. I didn't realize that.
Okay, let him know to call in then.
Yeah.
And we'll just listen.
Cool. Yeah. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure how that happened. I've never had that problem before. Okay. Um. So yeah. So then the models. So Pi is a really good model, and Pi is by Inflection AI, and it's a conversational model. So it succeeds in what I call natural conversation processing, which is the next level to natural language processing, which is the next evolution of that. And so Pi is really good if you're looking for like a conversational partner. If you're not looking to write a paper, but you're looking to bounce ideas off of something, bounce ideas off of Pi, because it's really good. It asks you questions, it asks you follow-up questions. It's designed to detect empathy. I did a study on Pi last semester in relation to mental health, and Pi it's able to identify and utilize therapy techniques in conversation to encourage and to help with mental health. Um, and so Pi is a very powerful AI, but it's very specific to only conversation. So it's not gonna it's not gonna write your it's not gonna do the same kind of writing that I wouldn't say any model is gonna write your paper for you. But it's not going to help you in the same way that ChatGPT is. So kind of getting back on track. Let me get back to the slideshow that I had. Okay, so there you go. Okay, and let me share my screen again. Okay, so values. The biggest reason why your artificial intelligence probably isn't going to be doing what you want it to do, because it doesn't know what you as a human value. And this is the biggest reason why between communication between human to human, whether it be human to AI or human to human or human to dog, right? There's a communication barrier of understanding of what's important to the other person, what's important to you as the user when you're interacting with the model. And so oftentimes when you're asking it to do a task and you're not providing goal orientation, you're not providing context, you're going to receive a bad output that's not necessarily bad per se, possibly, but it could be that it doesn't align with your intended values, with what you value from the output, right? It doesn't align with what you are needing from the output. And so everything about your interactions with AI and your prompt is to align that value, is to get on the same page of what you find important in the answer. And this is why there's in my research that I've done in the thesis study I've been conducting over the last several months, there's this observation I made when conducting usability tests, observational tests, surveys, all these different things that people oftentimes think of these models as generative technology. They think of them as technology for generative tasks, as these models can just write your paper for you. You see on social media all the time this hype where it's have AI write your research plan, have AI write your book for you, your novel for you. If you talk to any, it's a little bit of a tangent, but if you talk to any writer, they're going to tell you that putting the actual words to paper is a tiny percentage of their novel process, right? Writing a novel involves research, and which then research involves interviews, surveys, synthesized research, understanding the world, right? It involves all these steps. And yes, to some extent, AI can do all those steps to some level, some better than others. It's not necessarily doing it on its own. It's not necessarily, maybe one day it will, and that could be right around the horizon, but where we're at now, it's not. And so I think it's a better mindset to think of these as transformative technologies rather than generative technologies, which then means that you're using it more so to transform data, to change how. I'll go over a little bit what this means later on if we would like. I can dive deeper into what that means, but it means you're using them for transformative operations. As if you use them for reductive operations, it may not know what you valued as a person, so it may summarize it or make it more condensed in a way that you don't want, right? Because it may have not been aware of what you value. If you use it for generative operations, generative prompts, then it may hallucinate, make facts up, get things incorrect, or not do things correctly. But if you use them for transformative tasks, you can unlock a whole new door of possibilities. And the biggest thing I use AI for is doing exactly what I'm doing with you guys right now. I talk for like, an hour, 10 minutes at a time, because that's as long as I can talk for and have it listen to me. And I'll do speech text technology and transcribe what I say into the prompt that I want to communicate. And then it will organize that information for me. And that's been impactful. That's been powerful, is using AI as a way to brainstorm, organize thoughts, transform what's in my head into a particular format, so that I don't have to concern myself over grammar or over things that maybe that I as a human don't necessarily value or don't have fun with, right? But others might enjoy that grammar process, so they may use it for something different. But it's about kind of finding that alignment, finding out how you can use it for your own tasks. And that involves goals and context. And so there's countless number of frameworks out there, and we can go over some specific frameworks later on if we see the value in that, and if that is helpful to everyone, and we want that. But among these frameworks, as I was studying and doing my thesis, I analyzed all the frameworks out there that people use for prompting, and I analyzed several prompts. And there's three things, more so two things, but you can kind of bring it to a third. But there's two things that they stand out between all these frameworks, and that is context and goal orientation. Questions like, what information is essential? Why is this task important to you? How will this enhance your outcome? How will the output help you, right? Or who is the intended audience? And then with goal orientation, what is the primary task to be accomplished? Why are these tasks critical to your objective? How will you measure success? How will you measure that output? How will you ensure that it's accurate, right? How will you ensure that it matched and aligned with your input? And who is responsible for the task execution, right? These questions are aligned to have this what, why, who, how, who system, right? Kind of make it easier. They're all kind of asking, what is that end goal? What is the context that you need for that end goal? And oftentimes when I'm prompting, I'm giving more context than I think I need. I'm going above and beyond and producing countless contexts. And I'm and sometimes in some situations, I'm saying why I'm doing this. Like when preparing these slides, I told it, I'm doing this workshop. This is how many people are attending. This is the audience. This is what we're discussing. This is where I'm presenting. This is how I'm going to be presenting. This is how I talk. I told it all this information, right? Kind of broke it down. And I think in kind of reflecting my personal experience, sometimes my interactions with AI take just as long in some cases as with certain tasks as just doing it myself. But I enjoy the puzzle of doing that. I enjoy the process of interacting with AI. I enjoy having that conversational partner. And then in the next slide, we do have a lot of new people, I think. We should have probably people came in. I just want to do a check with the audience, make sure everyone can hear me, that I'm speaking, not speaking too fast. It looks like I got a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. Great. And I want to let new people know that you can submit questions in the chat. I can't see the chat right now, but I'll stop sharing my screen shortly, and then I can look at the chat. You can also raise your hand if you have something you want to, a story you want to share, or a question. So goal orientation is very important. The next is adaptability. So this is like a maybe. We don't necessarily need to include this in our three, but a reoccurring theme between frameworks and methodologies is adapting the instructions that you're asking for into the subject area or the discipline that you're trying to address. So a good proverb I use that I personally love is the 10,000 experts proverb. So it's this idea, it's this saying that kind of encompasses this thought, this idea that AI, these models, these large language models like ChatGPT, like OpenAI, these models you interact with are built up of billion, if not trillions of data points. And so it's almost as though every time you send a request in, that you're talking to a room of 10,000 experts. And if you were to ask the question, why does the apple fall from the tree? If you talk to a physicist, they're going to answer that question differently than if you talk to a biologist or if you talk to a philosopher, right? Every individual is going to answer that question differently. And so, and why did the apple fall from the tree is a very simple prompt. So it's probably not going to have a problem with it. But when you're making more complex tasks, when you're putting together more complex prompts, it's important to key in on the discipline. So what discipline are you addressing? And it's important to key in on structure, right? It's important to utilize techniques that organize your prompt. If you're going to include examples, then identify what is the example, put it in brackets, put it in, frame that example, tell the AI, this is the example. And you can also think of it as easy for you, easy for it. If it's going to be, if someone were to send you these instructions and they were asking you to do that task, would it be easy for you to do? Or if you had that domain knowledge, would it be easy for you to do? And if the answer is no, then most likely your prompt is too confusing, too elaborate. You're trying to do too much in one prompt. You need to split it up. You need a prompt architecture, which is like the virtual brain, which is utilizing multi-input strategies, right? Which is sending more than one prompt. You may need to do something like that. You may need to break it up, right? So in my process of writing my thesis, and I use it, but I don't write the entire thesis all in one prompt. I have these back and forth interactions, back and forth conversations, and I talk like this, expressing what I know about prompting to the AI, and then it rewrites it into the proper format. And then I read over that. I'm like, okay, no, I didn't want to address that. Oh no, I didn't like that. And I talk back into it and I correct it. And I say, hey, I didn't like this. I like this. Can you rewrite this? And sometimes I have to put in like brackets what I'm intending, you know, and I have to organize my prompt. So what structure or adaptation do you need to structure your prompt to ensure it's organized? And organize specifically in that discipline you're asking for. So that subject area. So how would a physicist organize their words, their prompt, versus how would a teacher write their prompt? So a teacher might use a rubric system, right? While a physicist might use some common framework or methodology within physics. So utilizing the tools of that subject area you're wanting the instructions to be in is a really fantastic way to give context in an indirect way. And how can you use divergent thinking? So another really great saying I like is a divergent intern. And you're in a divergent intern, you're thinking of AI as something that thinks differently. It doesn't think like a human. It's not a human. It doesn't have senses like smell. It doesn't know it doesn't have spatial awareness. It doesn't know where you're located. It doesn't know certain information like that. But on top of that, it's very context sensitive. And some models are more context sensitive than other models. So like if you're talking to ChatGPT 4 versus if you're talking to Gemini, they both handle context differently. I don't know exactly the inner workings of Gemini and how they handle it, but I know that OpenAI, they have what's called attention mechanisms, or another way of, a layman's way of putting it is context window selection. So when you send your prompt in, they actually have a model that looks for context, identifies that context, and sends your inquiry, your prompt, to a specific expert in their system, to a specific portion of their model. So if your prompt says act as an expert physicist or act as an expert philosopher, those are going to be sent to two different parts of the model. So your prompt in ChatGPT, in OpenAI's model, ChatGPT, it doesn't parse the entire large language model. That would cost them too much money. And also, you may not get, there's pros and cons to it. I won't go into it here, but there's pros and cons to this method of doing things. But if you put the right context, then it gets parsed to the right part of the model. It gets to that right expert that you want to ask. And then again, we have the audience question. Who benefits from this thinking structure? Who benefits from this prompt? And that's like you, or is it an external audience or multiple people, right? So we have these reoccurring questions that are reoccurring themes of, you know, what are the tasks? What are the critical objectives? How will you measure it? And who is the audience? I mean, if you see that again and again, these questions being the foundation of any prompt you're going to write. Again, what information is essential? What is the task? How is this task important to you, or why is it important to you? And how will this enhance your output? How will this help you? And who is intended audience? And we see that again and again and again. And all of these are done to align the input with the output, to align your values with the AI's values. You can think of the AI as a 0 value system or a billion value system. Both of those ideas work. But as a 0 value system, it means that it has no base values other than the values that maybe OpenAI imposed on it, but it doesn't have like any values of its own, right? So it at the same time, it has all the values of the internet. So it has every value of every person on the internet. It's every putting thing on the internet. So it has a lot of values and no values at the same time. So you have to direct it to that, right? What you value. Are there any questions at this point? Let's do another audience check. How are people feeling? How are we doing? Good, good. Again, if there's any specific questions, I also put together a poll. Where did that poll go? There it is. Okay. I put together a poll on, and it's 3 questions. And I told you guys, some of you, to wait on the last question because you might want more context on what that means. So these questions just get the foundation. It looks like we have a lot of casual users, some people who identify as a novice user. We have a lot of people who are most people using this weekly, and then we have some using it daily and more than daily. So in my research, I identified 9 different types of prompters. These are reoccurring themes in what I observed and how people communicate instructions, right? So you have the minimalist prompter, and these are your most common users. Most people are minimalist prompters, either whether it's because of time, or they don't have the time to do it, right? They don't have the time to interact with these models. They don't have time to write comprehensive, whatever it might be. They're a minimalist prompter, and that means they utilize concise 1-sentence queries. So when they're discussing with an AI, they type really small sentences, and they type really efficient, like really short, and they don't give context, right? And then you have a pragmatic prompter who's doing a balance. They're more so a minimalist out of efficiency rather than out of time constraints or just laziness, right? They're more of a short, concise prompter just because they're being more efficient, right? So they're doing what's needed to get the output they need. They're offering a balance of context and shortness, and they're iterating based on AI feedback. So they're having these back and forth conversations that are maybe longer than a minimalist prompter who might give up in a conversation sooner. And you have your detailed prompters, and these are individuals who provide detailed context. These are me. These are me. So this is what I'm doing right now with the AI, talking for an hour, giving all this information, giving it about my life story, giving it who I am as a person, telling it, what I did in 3rd grade for a simple 2-sentence post on Twitter, right? It's this detailed and kind of overly detailed prompting, and more specifically, a detailed prompter provides context, task breakdowns, and specific goals for optimal response. Iterative prompters, they're doing step-by-step dialogue. Technically, you could be more than one of these prompters, so I shouldn't have made it a mono question, a single choice question. It should have been select all, you can all apply to you. But an iterative prompter is one that does like step-by-step dialogue. They kind of are changing their prompt, they're editing it, they're making a lot of changes like that. An explorative prompter, very, very simple. They craft open-ended prompts, they kind of explore various outputs. They contextual, again, you're providing a lot of context. Enthusiastic prompter, you love prompting, you love the art of solving problems, which again is me. You love the art of of solving the problem of communicating with AI. And then utility driven, very simple, this kind of like pragmatic. Your prompts are strictly based on tasks, and they vary, and you might use different frameworks based on what you're trying to achieve. And so I'm gonna go into, got about 20 minutes left. I can definitely yes, we can share samples and examples. Yes, let's do that. So I have examples, and I'll share my screen and show these, and I'll also give some examples auditorially. I don't have any slides prepared for these examples, but I have them in my thesis. And so I will share my screen and we'll go over these examples here in a second. Also, with the last 20 minutes, I want to make sure that we get anybody's questions in, anybody's specific concerns or questions. There's a lot to cover in this topic, and I talk really fast, and I know I've been covering a lot, but I want to make sure I cover things that are relevant to people and what people value. So let me just okay, so I'm going to share my screen again here in a second. Okay, there we go. Okay. This might be a little bit harder to see because I'm not like it's not as blown up, but I'll zoom in here. Don't worry. So we already talked about these operations: reductive, transformative, generative, and on their simplistic level, they just look like something like this, right? They look like just create, and then what you want to create, and there's some simplistic context here, and then it outputs, and this output was exactly what I wanted. And I won't go into detail because I'll have other examples that are better. But a simple, just like generative operation, right? And this is a creative task. So this D&D is a TTRPG game. So this is for a creative task. So if it hallucinates, that's great. I want hallucinations here because this is a creative task that I'm doing. I want it to make things up, right? And so this is the power of using hallucinations. And in case you don't know, hallucinations are historically mean when the AI makes mistakes, when it makes facts up, when it imagines things. And I like to think of hallucinations as a power, especially when you're doing a creative task. But let's get into more prompt examples. So within the set of reductive, transformative, and generative, you have extractive, evaluation, and expansive prompting. Extractive is when you're trying to extract a piece. So I'll oftentimes upload a document of some sort, a PDF, a paper of some sort, like an academic paper that I'm researching, and I've read through the paper and I've looked over it, and then I'll tell the AI, hey, I need you to extract some statements from here. I want to extract statements on this topic. I want to extract statements evolving around prompting, and I want to extract statements dealing with that. And I want to use these statements as quotes in my paper to put in as in-text citation. So I haven't put any in-text citations in my thesis yet because I haven't finished it, but I have these pages and pages of quotes that I've used extractive prompting with AI to extract these quotes from the paper. Then I have to just in case, I read the paper again to make sure the quotes line up, right? To make sure they're accurate. But I have these quick extraction of really valuable quotes, and I can use Control F to validate that the quotes are accurate, that they're in the paper. And I have these really powerful, it does a really good job with that. You can upload a PDF, tell it to extract X, Y, and Z, and it does a really great job with that. If your PDF is within, I would say, under 10 pages, any longer than that, it may have a problem with it. Definitely under like 5 or 10 megabytes, definitely under 10 megabytes. And some people swear that Claude is better at it than ChatGPT. Let's go to another example here. So a strategy that I often use is priming. So priming is the act of setting foundational context before going into a conversation. So it's about setting the tone in conversation. So for a TTRPG game that I was doing, I wanted to create a character for this game that embodied a character from a show that I watched. And so I started out the conversation, hey, do you know this show? And it said yes. And I said, hey, are you aware of this character? And it said yes. And I said, hey, are you aware of this character's swords and abilities? And it said yes. And then what's not shown here is I went on and used this as foundational context, as context for the conversation. So now it's set up for the show. It's set up for the main character. It knows its abilities that I'm aiming for, and then I had it make what I wanted to make. Then I used a generative technique like this to then create what I wanted to create, right? And so priming is fantastic. If I just went right in and I said, hey, I wanted to create something from the show Black Clover. Also, I didn't know the character's name, so I wanted to learn that. But if I said, I want to create this X, Y, and Z from the show Black Clover, and just told it straight up that and just had it immediately do the task, it probably would have been a worse output that wouldn't have aligned with it would have hallucinated in ways I didn't want it to. It would have made up information. It would have not known about the specific show I was talking about and been confused. I would have been asking for it to do too much at one time. And a term for this is called prompt overload, similar to cognitive overload that humans had, where I overload you with information. I'm probably doing that now because I'm talking so quickly. But it's when you overload a human with information, the same thing can occur in AI. You can overload it with too much at once, and it gets lost in its meaning and what you're trying to accomplish. Large language models have gotten way better at handling information, but they still suffer from cognitive overload. They still suffer from that. And I can't see the chat right now, by the way. So if you do have something in the chat that you need me to read, give me a hands up or a thumbs up, and I'll check it. So example prompting, shot prompting, you give it examples of what you're trying to do. Let me go to my, stop sharing my screen for a second and go to my conversations and show you some samples there, which I think could be informative, at least on my style. But I want to iterate that I'm hesitant to share my examples of my particular style because everyone has different styles and everyone has different ways of approaching, and my style is kind of divergent. It's not really the common way of doing it. When preparing for this presentation, these are my prompts. So the first thing I did, this is my first prompt. I kind of approached this haphazardly. So I had no architecture plan. I just kind of approached it kind of with a shotgun approach, right? And I said this is my first long prompt. We're not going to bother reading this. It's too long. But this is why another reason why I don't share examples of my own prompting techniques, because this is what I write, right? This is like these long prompts that I do. And then this is another long prompt. So I wrote all this information about what I want to talk about, what I want to do, and it broke it down for me and organized it. And again, I might be moving too fast here, so if you want me to slow down, I can. And it organized it, and I don't think there's any of this, and it's kind of this information I'm talking right now, right? It organized it for me. It organized my thoughts, right? Here's something that I wanted to address, right? I already addressed that in the beginning of the slideshow, so we're good. And then here's like another long rant I did, right? And to get only these three, all this information right here that I said was all to prompt and get out these 4 bullet points. These 4 bullet points, all of this did that. If I didn't say some of these historically, if from my personal experience, if I didn't say some of this, the majority of this, then I would have gotten bullet points that didn't match up with what I valued, and it would have been too long. They would have been too out there. They would have not aligned up with what I was trying to achieve. These matched what I was trying to achieve pretty on point. I probably, if I really wanted to, would do more work with it, more back and forth with it, but it lined up pretty well. There's another message in the chat here. Perfect, no worries. Yeah, we're approaching the end here. We're probably going to stop for questions here soon. And definitely I'll share this recording, and hopefully, and I didn't realize that people outside of ASU couldn't join in, which was unfortunate. And so in my conversations, we'll see this continuously. And another thing I take advantage of, if we don't have enough time to really talk too thoroughly, because it's a whole other topic of its own. The reason why I use ChatGPT over Claude, I did purchase a Claude subscription, but I don't like Claude because ChatGPT has all these useful tools. So I can click edit, and I can now edit this response. I can now change this prompt, and I can make a change to it, and I can click save and submit and get a new response based on the changes I made. I can do this too. I can highlight a portion of ChatGPT's message, and I can reply specifically to that. And so I can reply to specific aspects of ChatGPT's messages, and this is all with ChatGPT 4. I think you might be able to do this with 3.5 to an extent, but it's all with 4. And the most amazing thing I like about ChatGPT is that I have all of these, what OpenAI calls PPTs, but they're essentially these sub models or sub dedicated conversations that have these overarching instructions that the AI always runs through whenever you send a prompt. So this is my thesis helper. This helps me with my thesis, helps me with my writing my thesis. And if we go into it, then in the instructions for this, if it loads here, in the instructions here, we have instructions on how I want my thesis written, right? And I'm not going to go over these instructions in too much detail, but we have these instructions on how I'm writing my thesis, what I want to do. We have we're using a format code here, which comes from international standards, and so this is the code for thesis writing, and then an identification of APA 7th edition style, and then some additional information. My outline. This is my outline of my paper, and I also have all these files in here, these glossary of terms, all this information, all this context. And so every time I send a message through this interface, not only am I saying all of this, but it's also getting all of these instructions, right? And these instructions were made pretty haphazardly, but sometimes I can spend hours kind of iterating on these instructions. Yeah, so we're gonna kind of slow down there. We have 10 minutes left. Is there any particular questions that anybody has? Anything particular that I went over quickly that someone found interesting that you want me to elaborate more on? Is there anything else that I didn't cover that someone wanted to cover or have a struggle with? Any questions? Great. So I'm going to take that as a no. So I'm going to be I'll share my thesis paper with everyone. It will be open source for everyone. And then I also have this glossary of terms, which is an ongoing library. I've shared it before in the AI chat, Slack chat. It's an ongoing library of terms. And I will share that as well with the Zoom chat. And it's just a set of any term I think is relevant to AI, any term I think is important to know when it comes to AI. And it's not necessarily organized well because it's an ongoing growing database, but all these terms will be in my final thesis paper. And they'll be more organized in the thesis. But it's a really good source that I share with everybody. And I also love seeing people's thoughts in there. You can comment on it. You can add your own terms. It's like, anything you think is relevant to it. And I just shared it in the Zoom chat. I can also share it elsewhere, and it will be shared when I share out this recording. It will be shared there as well. And so that's a really great source. I can also share. I do have an old presentation that has a lot of this information in it as well. That is in presentation format that I can share when I share out the recording. And I also have that simple presentation that I shared my screen with, that I can also share in the Zoom chat. That could be useful to people. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, is there any other thoughts, questions? The most key things I think I want everyone to leave with, if I were to choose two things that maybe this won't be two things, maybe more than two things, but if I were to choose some things that you guys were to leave with, one is thinking of this technology as transformative rather than as generative. So thinking of it as, instead of it writing your entire paper for you, it's a collaborative partner that you have a discussion with and that you talk with, that you talk back and forth with, or that you think of it as an intern. So you think of it easy for you, easy for it, put smart in, get smart, right? And you think of those things, you can really use the power of this tool. AI is not for everyone. Where the technology is at now is not helpful to everyone. Some people like to write. Some people like to write out their grammar. Some people, it helps them to write and think through their process as they're writing. For me, I'm more of a talker. I talk to think through my processes. So for me, this changed my life. I had a paper that was due like tomorrow, and I just found out about it. And it was a 40-page paper that I needed to write. With the help of AI, because I had everything in my head already, I talked to AI in 10-minute chunks and got that paper done in last night and a little bit this morning. So like from like 4 p.m. yesterday to about midnight to a little bit this morning, I wrote like a 40-page paper, well formatted. I even had time to mess with Photoshop and do photos and create little cool graphics for it. And I had time to do all these additional things that probably in the past I wouldn't have time to do. And I was able to go above and beyond. So it did take me quite a bit of time, but I went above and beyond with it and really talked to my ideas. So yeah, so there's a lot there, definitely. So yeah, we're ending right now. There are 5 minutes left. I'm gonna stay on a little bit longer if anybody wants to have a one-on-one and wants to talk a little bit longer. Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone in the comments. Yeah, there's a lot of information. I talk really fast. I'll share the recording. I'll also share a transcript of the recording. And I'll if I have time, I'll do a bullet point summary with ChatGPT, because Zoom's AI summary isn't great. So I'll do a more accurate summary with ChatGPT and share that as well. But yeah, thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you for being there. I feel bad for those who weren't ASU. Luckily, the majority of people who signed up, I think, were ASU individuals. So, yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Definitely a lot more to talk about. And it's like, yeah, I have about 100 pages of my thesis. There's a lot more to discuss. Definitely. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, feel free to leave as you want to. We're done. But if you, yep, perfect. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Kyle. Thank you so much. By the way, we're psychology faculty and there's several of us watching on my account. So this is fabulous. This is super useful.
Good job, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice.